The sound of distant thunder echoed through the alien sky, but it wasn't from a storm, it was war. Bright flashes of light tore across the atmosphere as Earth's defense fleet clashed with the Royal Armada of the Zyari Empire. The Council chambers back on Earth had always believed diplomacy could work, but they were wrong. One small misunderstanding at the edge of neutral space had turned into a battle that scorched 3 moons in less than a week. Commander Rylan hadn't expected to survive the first wave, let alone be sent as a representative to deliver a ceasefire scroll. The mission was madness. Send a single human officer deep into enemy space through the gates of the Empress's palace and hope that she listened. Still, Rylan volunteered, not because he was brave, but because he was tired. Tired of watching his comrades die. Tired of war that didn't even have a reason anymore. Now he stood inside the grand corridors of the Zyari throne hall, escorted by guards who said nothing and moved like shadows. The walls shimmered with soft blue lights, alive with flowing patterns that pulsed with a rhythm like breathing. He had seen alien architecture before, but nothing like this. Every surface here felt alive. His boots clicked softly as he walked, his heart pounding louder than his footsteps. The guards stopped without warning and pointed ahead. A golden door, etched with symbols older than any Earth language, stood slightly open. Rylan paused. He was supposed to wait here until summoned, but the door called to him in a way he couldn't explain. A strange warmth flowed from the crack. Against his better judgment, he took one quiet step forward, then another, until he was close enough to peek through the gap. What he saw made him forget to breathe. Inside, standing in front of a large glowing mirror, was the Empress herself. She wore no armor, no crown. Her robe shimmered like starlight, clinging softly to her elegant figure. Her silver hair fell in waves down her back, and her golden skin seemed to radiate from within. She was breathtaking and terrifying, not because of her beauty, but because of the silence around her. She looked like someone who ruled not through strength, but through the calm certainty that she could destroy worlds if she chose. Rylan didn't move. He didn't speak. He stood frozen, eyes locked on her reflection. Then her head turned, slowly, her eyes meeting his through the mirror, as if she had known he was there all along. Her voice came a moment later, soft but powerful, calm but commanding, and every word struck like a drumbeat. She didn't scream, she didn't call for guards. She simply asked a question that burned itself into Rylan's soul. "What are you doing here, human?" Rylan's throat dried as the words settled into the air, heavier than any threat he'd ever faced in battle, and still, he couldn't move. The Empress had spoken not with anger, but with interest, as if she were more curious than offended. His instincts screamed at him to retreat, to apologize, to drop to his knees and beg forgiveness, but something about her presence froze him in place. She turned slowly from the mirror and faced him directly, and now that he saw her without reflection, she looked even more impossible, taller than expected, yet graceful, her eyes glowing faintly silver as if starlight lived behind them. Rylan raised his hands in peace, hoping it wouldn't be mistaken as surrender. "I didn't mean to intrude," he said quietly. The door was open. The guards stopped walking. I didn't know what to do. She didn't respond right away. She just stared at him, walking forward at an unhurried pace, each step echoing softly in the chamber. Her bare feet made no sound, yet her presence filled the room like thunder. "And so you wandered in," she said at last, her tone unreadable. Humans are always curious, always crossing lines they were warned to avoid. Rylan didn't know whether to nod or deny it, so he stayed silent. "You are the envoy they sent for peace," she continued, circling him once. "You wear no armor, no gun, only a message and foolish bravery." "Not foolish," he said carefully. "Just hopeful." She stopped, just a few steps in front of him now, and studied his face like it held secrets. Hope is for children and dreamers, she said. Yet you carry it like a weapon. Rylan met her gaze. Because it's the only weapon I have left. That made her pause. Her head tilted slightly, and for the first time, a small shift passed through her expression. Not a smile, but a quiet recognition. Come, she said, turning away. You have seen what you were not meant to. There is no changing that now, so let us walk and see what else you will break. Unsure whether it was a trap or an invitation, Rylan followed her through a different set of doors that hissed open as she approached. The room beyond was darker, deeper, lit by soft strips of alien light that followed their steps. The walls curved like the inside of a living shell, and the air tasted faintly of electricity and salt. This palace was built before your Earth lit its first fire, she said as they walked. My ancestors walked these halls when your species still feared thunder. Her words weren't spoken with pride, but with something older, something heavier. Do you know what we thought of humans when we first found you? She asked, not stopping. Primitive, loud, fragile, but curious. And curiosity is the most dangerous trait of all. Rylan listened in silence, understanding that every sentence she spoke was part history, part warning. And yet here you are, she said, finally stopping before a tall, oval structure at the center of the chamber. It pulsed with blue light and let off a gentle hum, like a machine dreaming. This is called the Heart of Memory. Every ruler before me has left their thoughts here, and when I die, so will I. She placed her hand on the surface, and it responded to her touch by blooming into a soft glow. No one outside my bloodline has ever stood this close to it. Rylan took a step closer, unsure if he was allowed, but she didn't stop him. Why are you showing me this? He asked. Because you looked into a room you weren't supposed to, she said, and instead of running, you listened. Her voice dropped slightly. And because I think you need to understand that what you humans are fighting is not just territory or pride. It's survival. And we're tired. Rylan swallowed hard. This wasn't what the briefings had prepared him for. The reports called her a warmonger, a tyrant, a queen of blood. But standing here now, in this quiet place full of memory and ancient voices, she looked more like someone burdened by eternity. I didn't come to make you surrender, he said. I came because I thought there had to be another way. She stepped close to him again, eyes locked onto his, and for the first time, her voice was no longer guarded or royal. It was personal. Then show me that way, human. The path beyond the Heart of Memory led them into another chamber, smaller and dimmer, where the walls shimmered with threads of light that moved like water under glass, and Rylan realized that everything in this palace was alive in some way, shaped not only by tools but by will and thought passed down through generations. The Empress walked ahead in silence, and he followed, unsure if he was witnessing something sacred or something secret, but each step he took pulled him deeper into a world he barely understood. His training told him to memorize the surroundings, to record every detail for tactical reports, but his heart told him to pay attention in another way, because this was no longer about advantage. It was about something much older. She stopped near a translucent wall where strange symbols floated, shifting every few seconds like language changing mid-sentence. Do you know what this says? She asked without looking at him. No, Rylan answered honestly, but I can feel it. She nodded slowly. It's a memory. From the first queen who walked these halls. She wrote of a time when our people believed they would never need war again. But war always finds those who build too much peace. Her words landed like a slow weight in the room. My ancestors prepared for centuries, she said. They learned to hold power quietly until others mistook it for weakness. Rylan looked at the symbols again. They were beautiful and tragic. Did they ever wish to leave the galaxy? He asked. To find peace somewhere else? Her head turned, eyes finding his with an intensity that made him forget to blink. We did leave, she said. Long ago. We found a place where the stars were kind, and the air did not carry the smell of blood. But something always pulls us back. A call. A scream, or a human transmission that rattles the quiet. Rylan didn't speak. He couldn't. Because he now realized she wasn't just talking about the war. She was talking about herself, about all the lives she carried in her bones. "You didn't ask to see any of this," she said. "But now that you have, the question is whether you will carry it or break beneath it." He stepped closer to her, not in defiance, but in understanding. "I'll carry it," he said, "because I think we both want something that can't be found through force." The Empress watched him closely. Then she turned and walked back toward the lift that had brought them down. "Come," she said. "There is one more place I want you to see before you return to your people." They ascended in silence, the walls of the lift glowing softly with waves of shifting light that pulsed in time with their hearts, and Rylan realized that nothing here was built for war. It had all been built for memory. When they reached the surface again, she led him to a side corridor he hadn't noticed before. Narrower and darker, the lights there cooler, blue and silver, like moonlight. They reached a door made of something that looked like stone but felt like air. She pressed her palm against it, and it dissolved. Inside was a room with a single object in the center, a sphere hovering above a pedestal, spinning slowly, glowing with warm amber light. "This is called the bond," she said. "It records the deepest thoughts of two who stand before it. It cannot be opened unless both are willing." Rylan stared at it, unsure whether he had the right to even stand there. "Why me?" he asked. "Because I think we're already connected," she said. "And I need to know what you truly want before I let you leave." She extended her hand toward him. He looked at her palm, open and waiting. No tricks, no force, just choice. Slowly, he reached out and placed his hand in hers. The sphere pulsed brighter. The room grew warmer. And Rylan felt something open inside him. Not taken, but invited. Memories, feelings, doubts, hopes. All of it shared between them, like whispered breath in a sacred hall. When it ended, she pulled her hand back and said nothing for a long time. But when she finally spoke, her voice held a tremor even she couldn't hide. "Now I know the human who saw me." When Rylan stepped out of the Empress's palace that evening, the sky above was a deep orange, glowing with the twin suns lowering over the alien capital's skyline, and the air felt different now, not because the weather had changed, but because he had. The guards didn't speak to him. They simply opened the gates as if they had already known he would return alive, and that alone told him more than a dozen conversations ever could. His transport waited silently at the platform, a small vessel from Earth's command, barely permitted this deep into alien territory. As he entered the ship and sat down in the quiet cabin, Rylan kept his eyes on the horizon, still feeling the heat of the bond in his chest. No words had been spoken after that moment. The Empress had let him leave without another command or threat. But something unspoken had passed between them, and it clung to his thoughts like a hand gripping the back of his mind. When the shuttle lifted off, he looked down at the spires of her city, carved from glowing crystal and impossible stone, and wondered how a place so beautiful had become the heart of so much fear. By the time he landed at Earth Command Base 12, his nerves were steel again. He walked through the secure corridors, ignoring the stares and questions until he reached the command debrief room. General Nash was already seated, eyes sharp, expression unreadable. The other officers flanked him in silence, waiting for Rylan to speak first. He didn't bother sitting. He stood tall, hands behind his back, and began the way soldiers always did, with facts. "I met with the Empress. She accepted the scroll. No immediate retaliation was ordered. I was allowed to leave without resistance." One of the younger advisors leaned forward. "Did she speak of terms?" Rylan shook his head. "Not in the way you expect. She doesn't want surrender. She wants understanding. She believes we don't know what we're fighting for." Another officer scoffed and muttered something under his breath about manipulation. Rylan ignored it. "She showed me things," he said. "Memories, history, sacred places. Things that prove this war is not about land or power. It's about something deeper, something older." General Nash narrowed his eyes. "Then what does she want from us?" Rylan took a breath. "Not death, not dominance. She wants time. She wants to be heard before she makes her next move." The room went quiet for a long moment. Then Nash spoke again, low and slow. "So we trust her? Based on your feelings?" "Based on facts," Rylan said. "She could have killed me 100 different ways. She didn't. She let me go." "Or she let you live so she could study how we respond," the general shot back. "Or she let you go because she saw a crack to use." "Then I'll be the crack," Rylan answered, firm and steady. "If it opens the way to peace, I'll take that risk." The silence that followed was colder this time, more skeptical, more bitter. Nash dismissed the room with a wave of his hand. "We'll review your report. Until then, you're off the active roster." Rylan didn't fight the decision. He saluted and left. That night, alone in his room, he pulled out the small silver shard the Empress had given him. It wasn't metal, it wasn't crystal. It was something in between, and it pulsed faintly with the same rhythm he had felt during the bond. A signal, a message, or maybe a heartbeat. He placed it on the table and sat in silence. Hours passed. He didn't sleep. When the shard pulsed again, brighter this time, it cast shadows across his walls. Then came the sound. Not a voice, not words, but a single pulse of thought that filled his head with quiet understanding. It came from her, from the Empress. It said nothing and everything at once. She was waiting. She hadn't moved her armies, she hadn't ordered retaliation. But neither had she forgotten. The war had paused for a breath, and now the next move belonged to them. And if no one else would make it, then Rylan knew he would have to be the one who did. He couldn't go back to command. Not yet. He had to go back to her. He had to return to the palace and speak not as a soldier or envoy, but as a man who had seen her memory and felt her truth. Because he now carried both their hopes. Rylan left the base under cover of darkness, not because he feared his own people, but because he knew they wouldn't understand what he was doing, and no approval would be given for what he planned next. He boarded a small diplomatic shuttle and flew alone, manually overriding destination protocols and setting a course straight for the edge of Zyari territory, toward the place where everything had started and where it now had to continue. The stars outside the cockpit moved slower this time, or maybe it was just his mind slowing down, aware of what this next step could mean. He wasn't acting under command now. He wasn't carrying orders. What he carried was far more fragile and dangerous. A connection that had no place in war. When he arrived in orbit over the neutral moon, he expected weapons to lock onto his ship, but none did. Instead, a signal greeted him. Clean and wordless, simply opening a path. The Empress had known he would come. He landed beside the same platform they had stood on before, the same soft wind brushing against him as he stepped out onto the stone. She was already there, standing in the open, her long robe trailing behind her like it was part of the air itself. This time, she wore no crown, no medal, no armor, just woven threads of soft gray and white, like storm clouds trying to remember how to be calm. "You returned," she said, not surprised. "I thought you would." Rylan walked to her without hesitation. "They didn't listen," he said. "Some did, but not enough. They'll move soon. I came to stop it." She studied him in silence. "You cannot stop a fleet once it is fueled. Your words are not faster than fire." "Then I'll stand in front of the fire," he said. "If that's what it takes." For a moment, neither of them moved. The stars spun slowly above them. Her silver eyes did not blink. "What you offer is foolish," she said. "You think they'll hesitate to shoot because you're in the way." "No," Rylan replied. "I think you will." Her expression shifted, barely noticeable, but enough to tell him something had struck a nerve. "You believe I would stop?" she asked. "Even if they launch an attack? I think the woman I met behind that door, the one who showed me her memory, her soul, and her truth, I think she already made her choice," he said. "She just hasn't said it yet." The wind picked up slightly, carrying with it the sound of distant thunder. Not real thunder, but the low hum of warships igniting their drives far above. The time was running short. The Empress stepped closer to him, and this time, there was no fire in her movement. She looked tired. Not weak, not defeated, just tired of carrying so much alone. "Do you know what I lose if I choose not to strike?" she asked. "I lose the strength of fear. I lose the loyalty of those who only follow me because they are afraid." "Then let them go," Rylan said. "Let the ones who follow you for fear see something stronger." "And what would that be?" she asked. "You." "Not me," he said. "Us. What we've built in the silence between our enemies." She looked past him, to the stars again, where Earth's fleet was probably already moving. "If I choose mercy, they may not," she said. "And I will be the one who hesitated, the one who allowed the first blow to land." "Then let me be your first blow," Rylan said. "Let me go in your name. Let me speak to them, stand before them, tell them what you showed me. If they still fire, then I was wrong. But if there's even a chance, it's worth it." The Empress closed her eyes. When she opened them, something softer was there. "You would risk your life for a people who might not believe you, and for a queen who never promised you anything." "You already did," he said. "You let me see you." She stepped forward again and placed her hand over his heart. "Then go," she said. "Go. Not as an envoy, not as a soldier. Go as the bond we made. And let your words burn brighter than their weapons." The command deck of Earth's flagship, Resolute Dawn, was in full battle mode when Rylan arrived in the borrowed diplomatic vessel, its black hull reflecting the artificial light of the warships surrounding it like a shadow trying to survive in fire. Dozens of Earth's most advanced destroyers formed a barrier in orbit, weapons primed, engines roaring silently as they awaited the final signal from command. He could see it in their movement. They were ready for war, not peace. Still, he approached without hesitation, broadcasting his ID and a message of non-hostility. As expected, they did not fire, but their response was swift and cold. 2 interceptor drones latched onto his shuttle and guided it into the docking bay like claws pulling in prey. He stepped out to find himself surrounded by guards and commanders, none of them pleased to see him. General Nash stood at the front, arms crossed, eyes sharp with disbelief and frustration. "You weren't authorized to leave base," he said flatly. "And now you return in a stolen craft, minutes before the fleet engages." Rylan didn't flinch. "I came to stop a war," he said. "And I haven't failed yet." "You're too late," Nash growled. "Her ships are mobilizing. Our scans show weapons powering up. She's moving to strike." "She's responding," Rylan said, "not attacking. If we fire first, we lose everything. I've seen what she protects. And I've seen her hesitation." Nash signaled for the guards to lower their weapons, but his jaw remained clenched. "You've been compromised," he said. "You were supposed to observe, not fall under her spell." "She didn't trick me," Rylan replied. "She showed me something real, something sacred. She gave me the chance to speak before death falls. That's more than we've ever given her." Murmurs passed among the command staff. Some looked uneasy, others scoffed. But the room was listening now. "We don't trust her," Nash said. "That's not enough to hold fire." "Then trust me," Rylan said. 1 hour. Give me 1 hour to speak to her again. Face to face. If I don't return, do what you must. But if I do, maybe we can end this before the stars bleed." The silence that followed lasted too long. Nash stared at him, torn between duty and doubt. Finally, he nodded once. 1 hour, he said. "You're responsible for what happens next." Without wasting a second, Rylan boarded a smaller diplomatic pod and launched directly toward the center of the Zyari formation. No shields, no weapons, just lightspeed trust. The Empress's flagship waited in the heart of their defensive wall, dark and tall like a floating temple surrounded by warriors. As he approached, her ship did not lock weapons. Instead, her voice filled his pod through an open channel. "You returned again," she said. "You carry danger with your hope." "Then let me speak before it kills us," Rylan answered. The docking chamber opened like a breath, and when he stepped out, She was already there, alone again. No guards, no armor, just her, and the tension of choices that had sharpened every breath between them. "They are scared," she said. "They think this silence is a trick. Because they don't know silence can be mercy," he said. "They've only ever heard it after the guns stop." She walked with him down the central corridor of her ship. The walls glowed with faint blue lines, and his heart ached with the memory of the bond still beating inside him. "You know if they fire, I will answer," she said. "I cannot let weakness grow in the heart of my people." "I know," he said. "But they gave me 1 hour. Let me use it." She stopped walking. They stood in a room where the stars could be seen clearly through a dome of clear crystal, where the light of 2 worlds cast their glow upon both of them. "Then speak," she said. "But choose your words carefully, because this time the galaxy will be listening." Rylan stood in the center of the Empress's star-dome chamber, where the stars above were not just lights in the distance, but watchful eyes bearing witness to the most important conversation of his life, and maybe the last. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the ship's systems, and the Empress stood across from him with arms folded, her silver eyes locked onto his, waiting for the words that might rewrite the fate of 2 civilizations. "You asked me to speak," Rylan said, his voice steady, "so I will speak not as a soldier, not as a diplomat, but as someone who saw what most people never get to see. I saw the soul of your people." The Empress didn't interrupt. Her gaze didn't shift. Rylan continued. "When I stepped into your room, I thought I had made a mistake. I thought I would die for trespassing. But instead, you showed me something sacred. You showed me memory, pain, truth." He took a breath and paced slowly. "Your people are not monsters. They are protectors. They fight not to conquer, but to survive. But we didn't know that. We only saw ships and shields and fire." The Empress remained still, her expression unreadable. Rylan stopped pacing and stood still. "We responded to fear with fear. We responded to strength with missiles. And all the while, we missed what really mattered. You weren't asking to be obeyed. You were asking to be heard." The chamber's light shifted slightly as if the ship itself listened. "My people will not understand what I saw," Rylan said. "They'll think I was blinded. They'll call me compromised." But they didn't see the core. They didn't feel the bond. They didn't hear your history speak. The Empress lowered her arms, her fingers gently brushing the edge of a small control panel beside her. "And what would you have me do?" she asked. "Open our gates? Stand down and hope they will too?" Rylan shook his head. "No. I want you to send a signal. Not of surrender, not of weakness. A signal of trust. A transmission sent across the stars. One only I could ask for." Her brow lifted slightly. "What signal?" "Let me speak to them," Rylan said. "Live. Across both fleets. Let me tell them what I've seen. Let them hear it from someone they once trusted. From someone who stood on both sides." She didn't answer immediately. She walked slowly toward the center of the chamber, where a small crystalline console emerged from the floor. "If I open this channel," she said, "and they fire upon us anyway, my people will fall into total war. There will be no more discussion, no more restraint. Then they'll know," Rylan replied. "They'll see that the hand we offered was real. And they'll know who struck first." She placed her hand on the console, and it glowed gold beneath her palm. "This will link every active channel across both fleets. It will carry your voice to millions. Soldiers, commanders, civilians." Rylan nodded. "Then let me speak to all of them." She stepped back. "The floor is yours." The glow spread from the console to the chamber's edges, and a soft tone pulsed in the air. Rylan's throat tightened, but he didn't let fear win. "This is Commander Rylan Pierce of Earth's Expeditionary Force," he began. "I speak now to every ship, every soldier, and every citizen who can hear me." Silence followed, the kind of silence that waits to judge. "You were told we were under threat, that the Empress and her people were planning to strike. But I've stood in her world. I've seen what she protects. And I've seen that this war was never about power, it was about misunderstanding. He took a breath. I ask you now, before you press a button, before you launch a missile, ask yourself if you know the truth. Because I do. And the truth is that peace is still possible, but only if we choose it. The transmission faded as he stepped back. The Empress watched him closely. Now we wait, she said softly, to see if your words mean more than our weapons. Silence followed Rylan's broadcast, like a breath caught between heartbeats. And in that long moment, the universe seemed to stop spinning as both fleets held their fire, their fingers hovering over triggers, their eyes locked onto screens that now displayed a man who had once been theirs but now stood between two worlds. On Earth's flagship, General Nash stared at the blinking console, his face tight, jaw clenched, surrounded by officers who waited for the order that would bring light and death to the stars. But Nash didn't speak. He only listened, the voice they had trained, the man they had sent. The soldier they thought lost to the enemy was now the only thing keeping both sides from burning. On the Zayari command vessels, warriors watched their queen's flagship in silence, unsure what to expect, wondering if their Empress had made her final mistake by trusting a human. But the Empress stood tall, unmoved by doubt, her silver gaze fixed on Rylan, as if she had seen this path before and had chosen to walk it anyway. Then a single tone echoed across the fleets, a system-wide alert, not of attack but of reply. Earth Command had opened its channel. Rylan held his breath as Nash's voice filled the space. Stand down, the general said. All vessels power down weapons. Maintain current positions, await further instruction. Those words carried more weight than 1,000 missiles. No cheers, no celebration, just action. Ships that had glowed with deadly light now dimmed, their weapons retracting, their shields lowering. On the Zayari side, no orders were given, none were needed. The Empress turned her eyes upward, then gave a silent nod. Her fleet responded instantly, their formation shifting from an attack line to a protective ring around her flagship. The war had not ended in that moment, but something had ended. The madness, the momentum, the curse of old fire being answered with more fire. Rylan exhaled slowly. He looked over at her. They listened, he said, because you did. The Empress did not smile, but her voice softened. Perhaps there is more power in your voice than I first thought. Only because you gave it a place to be heard, he said. She stepped closer, and for the first time there was no tension between them. What happens now? She asked. Now, Rylan said, we talk. Not as enemies, not behind walls. Openly, publicly. Let them see what peace looks like. You speak as if peace is easy, she replied. It is not. I know, he said. But I also know we just stopped a war with words. That means we can start something better the same way. They walked together to the center of the chamber, the same spot where he had spoken to the stars. The console remained active, waiting. Do you trust them? She asked. Some, Rylan said. Enough. And me? She asked. He looked into her eyes, no longer afraid of what they might hold. Yes, he said, I do. She reached into her sleeve and pulled out the shard he had once carried. The bond crystal, now whole again, glowing softly in her palm. Then take this, she said. Not as a gift, not as a weapon, but as proof that we were real, that this happened. He accepted it with both hands, feeling its warmth return to his chest like a heartbeat finding its rhythm. Alarms no longer sounded. Warnings had gone quiet. Across both fleets, soldiers stood down and watched history being made by two figures who refused to let fear be louder than reason. Rylan turned to face the transmission node again. This is not a treaty, he said. It's not a promise, it's a beginning. The Empress stepped beside him and placed her hand over his on the console. Her voice joined his. And we make it together. Somewhere, children on both worlds watched. Somewhere, elders nodded in silence. Somewhere, soldiers holstered weapons and breathed again. The war was not over, but something stronger had taken root. In the space between enemies, peace had spoken, and this time it had been heard.